My mother called me on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in the middle of a budget review. I almost didn't pick up. I should not have picked up. But I did, because I still believed. Even then, that family meant something. She said it was urgent. She said my sister needed help. She said it would only take an hour of my time. 3 words that, when strung together by my mother, had historically cost me years. I want to be clear about something before I tell you this story. I am 31 years old. I am a financial analyst for a mid-sized investment firm in Austin, Texas. I have a 401k, a modest savings account, and a studio apartment I pay for entirely by myself. I am not rich. I am stable, which in my family is considered the same thing. That stability, the one I built dollar by dollar working 60-hour weeks while eating rice and beans through my mid-20s, was not seen as the result of discipline. It was seen as a resource, community property, a well that never ran dry because no one in my family had ever been the one doing the digging. My sister's name is Carla. She is 28. She has the kind of beauty that made every room rearrange itself around her, and the kind of charm that made people forget she had borrowed money from them. She is funny, magnetic, and genuinely talented at making other people feel responsible for her problems. Growing up, she was the one my parents introduced first at parties. She was the one whose school plays they attended in full while mine ran unrecorded. She was the one whose car my father co-signed, whose credit card bill my mother quietly paid, whose rent shortfalls were handled in whispered phone calls I was never supposed to know about. I had known for a long time that I was not the favorite. What I had not understood, not fully, not until that Tuesday, was that in my family, not being the favorite meant being the funding source. I drove to my parents' house on a Friday evening. My mother had been vague on the phone, which was never a good sign. Vague meant the ask was large enough that she needed to soften me up in person first. My father opened the door before I could knock, which meant he had been watching from the window. Also not a good sign. The house smelled like my mother's enchiladas, and something else underneath it, something anxious and rehearsed. Carla was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of tea she hadn't touched, looking like she had been crying recently and strategically. Her mascara was slightly smudged in exactly the right places. "Hey, sis," she said softly. I sat down. My mother bustled around pouring water I didn't ask for. My father cleared his throat twice. These were the opening rituals of a family intervention, and I had attended enough of them to know my role. I was supposed to soften. I was supposed to say, "Whatever you need." "So," I said, "what's going on?" My mother sat down across from me and folded her hands on the table the way she did when she was about to deliver news she had already decided I would accept. "Carla lost her job," she said. 3 weeks ago. I looked at Carla. She looked at her mug. "I wasn't fired," Carla said quickly. "The salon was downsizing. It wasn't performance-related." "Okay," I said slowly. "I'm sorry to hear that. What are you doing about it?" "That's actually what we wanted to talk to you about," my father said. He was leaning against the counter with his arms crossed, which was his power pose. He used it when he wanted to look authoritative without doing anything authoritative. "Carla has some expenses coming up. Her lease renews next month. Her car insurance lapsed. She's behind on 2 credit cards." I waited. I could feel it coming the way you feel a weather shift. That particular drop in pressure before something breaks open. "We were thinking," my mother said, choosing her words with the care of someone diffusing something, "that, since you're doing so well, you might be able to help cover things for a little while, just until she gets back on her feet. A few months, maybe. Her rent is $1,400. We'd handle the smaller things." I stared at her. $1,400 a month. She continued. "We looked at your salary range online, those comparison sites, and for your position, you should be making around 90, maybe 100,000. So 1,400 is really not that much when you think about it." They had looked up my salary. They had researched what I should be making, calculated Carla's monthly burn rate, and presented me with an invoice. At the kitchen table, over enchiladas. "You looked up my salary," I said. "We were just trying to understand the full picture," my father said, not meeting my eyes. I want to say that in that moment I erupted, that I said every sharp and righteous thing I had been storing up for 15 years. But I didn't. I went very quiet instead. I picked up the water glass my mother had poured and held it with both hands and just sat with the feeling of it. that cold, specific weight of being seen as a number rather than a person. "This isn't the first time," I said finally. "Your sister needs you," my mother said, as if I hadn't spoken. I stood up. I told them I needed to think about it. My mother looked surprised, like that answer wasn't on the script. My father said, "Don't take too long. The rent is due in 3 weeks." Carla reached across the table and touched my hand and said, "I really appreciate you," in a voice so practiced it sounded genuine. I drove home with the windows down despite the October cold. I needed the air. My chest felt like something was pressing on it from the inside. Here is what they did not know about me. They did not know that 4 months earlier, quietly and without telling anyone, I had accepted a new position, senior financial analyst, a firm in Denver, Colorado. A 32% salary increase, full relocation package, and a signing bonus that would clear my remaining student debt in one payment. I had not announced it because I had wanted, for once, to do something for myself before my family found a way to make it about them. They also did not know that 6 weeks before that Friday dinner, I had given notice on my Austin apartment. I had already donated half my furniture. My remaining boxes were stacked neatly in the corner of my bedroom, labeled and ready. I was leaving Austin in 9 days. I sat at my kitchen table that night and I thought about all of it. I thought about my college graduation, where my parents left early because Carla had a shift conflict and needed a ride. I thought about the $3,000 I had lent Carla 2 years ago for a car repair, money she had never mentioned repaying and that I had never had the nerve to bring up. I thought about every Sunday dinner where my accomplishments were acknowledged briefly, and then conversation pivoted immediately back to Carla's creative endeavors, her pottery phase, her candle business, her plan to open a wellness studio. I thought about all the times my stability had been treated as a tax I owed for the crime of being capable. And then I did something I had never done before. I started making calls. Not to help, to understand. The salon where Carla worked was not far from her apartment. I had driven past it a dozen times. I knew the owner slightly, a woman named Diane who had once complimented my blazer at a neighborhood block party. I did not call Diane. That would have felt too direct, too much like confirming what I suspected, rather than discovering what I feared. Instead, I called Carla's former coworker, a woman named Priya, who I had met twice at Carla's birthday gatherings and who had always seemed like the type who told the truth whether or not you asked for it. "Hey Priya, it's Claire, Carla's sister. I know this is a little out of nowhere." "Oh," she said, and there was something in that single syllable, a contained reaction, like a door opening a crack and then reconsidering. "Hey, Claire, what's up?" I kept it simple. I told her my family was asking me to cover Carla's expenses because she was laid off, and I wanted to understand the situation better before I committed to anything. I asked if she knew what had happened. The pause that followed was exactly 4 seconds long. I counted. "I can't really get into HR stuff," she said. "But," and her voice dropped slightly, "I will tell you this. It wasn't a downsizing. Diane still has 4 stylists. She hired someone new last month, actually." I closed my eyes. "Why was Carla let go?" "Claire," Priya said carefully, "your sister has a really hard time showing up. Like, on time, or at all. It had been a thing for a while. Diane worked with her for almost a year trying to accommodate. But there were clients who complained. There were no-shows. It became a liability thing." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat very still for a long time. Carla had not been laid off. She had been fired for chronic unreliability. My parents had either been told a different story or had chosen to believe one. They had brought me to that kitchen table to fund a version of events that wasn't true. The next morning, I did something else. I pulled up the public property records for my parents' address. It is a thing I know how to do because of my job. I told myself it was just due diligence. I told myself I was being thorough. What I found made me sit back in my chair and stare at the ceiling. 14 months ago, my parents had refinanced their mortgage. The appraised value of their home had increased significantly since they bought it, which was good. What was not good was that they had pulled out nearly $60,000 in equity. The refinance documents listed the purpose as home improvement. I pulled up satellite imagery of their house on my laptop. The roof was the same. The siding was the same. The driveway still had the same crack running diagonally from the garage that I had watched widen for 3 years. There had been no home improvement. There had been $60,000, and now there was not, and their mortgage payment was now $412 higher per month than it had been 2 years ago. I thought about Carla's car, the one she'd gotten 18 months ago, the one my father had said was a great deal, the one that was a certified pre-owned with low miles. I thought about Carla's apartment, which I had visited once, which had a balcony and in-unit laundry and was in a neighborhood with walkable coffee shops. I pulled up average rental rates for that neighborhood. Current listings showed units in that building running between $1,600 and $1,900. But my mother had said Carla's rent was $1,400. I thought about that for a while. Then I thought about one more thing, the wellness studio. 2 years ago, Carla had announced she was going to open a holistic wellness studio. She had a business plan, she said. She had a vision. She had looked into a space. My parents had been so excited. I had been the one to quietly pull my father aside and say, "Dad, starting a business requires capital. Who's funding this?" And he had said, "Don't worry about it. We're handling it. We believe in her." $60,000 in equity. A loan pulled 14 months ago. Carla's studio had never opened. Carla had pivoted to the salon job 8 months ago, which she had now lost. I put my laptop down. I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at the parking lot below and the pale October sky above it. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I thought I would be shaking. Instead, I felt the particular clearness that comes when a thing you have suspected for a long time finally resolves into a thing you know. My family was not asking me to help Carla through a rough patch. They were asking me to become the replacement funding mechanism after the first one had run dry. I spent the next 3 days finishing my packing and saying quiet goodbyes to the friends and colleagues who knew I was leaving. I went to lunch with my closest friend from work, a woman named Beth who had talked me through every version of this family dynamic for 4 years. I told her what had happened at the dinner. I told her what I had found. She set down her fork. "Are you going to tell them?" she asked. I said I was still deciding. But I was not still deciding. I knew what I was going to do. I had known since the night I drove home with the windows down. I just needed to let the knowing settle. My mother called on the Wednesday before I left. "Have you thought about it?" she asked. "We really need an answer, Claire. The first is coming up fast." "I have," I said. "Can we do dinner Sunday? All of us?" She sounded relieved. "Of course. I'll make your favorite." She said it warmly, like this was a normal family dinner and not a negotiation where one party had just learned the terms. Sunday came. I drove to their house for what I knew would be the last time in a long while. I had my car packed. Not everything, the movers had already taken the boxes, but the essentials. My laptop, my paperwork, a bag for the road. My first night in Denver was a hotel reservation I'd had for 3 weeks. I sat down at that same kitchen table. The enchiladas were there again. My father was in the same posture. Carla was there, and she looked slightly more composed than last time, which told me my mother had coached her. "So," my mother said, smiling with the careful optimism of someone who believed the hard part was over, "have you decided?" "I have," I said. I looked at the 3 of them, my mother's hopeful eyes, my father's crossed arms, my sister's practiced expression of grateful anticipation. "I want to talk about the house first." My father frowned. "What house?" "Your house," I said. I pulled out my phone. I had the property records screenshot saved. I set the phone on the table and turned it toward him. "You refinanced 14 months ago. You pulled $60,000 in equity. I'd like to understand where that money went before we talk about me covering anyone's rent." The silence was immediate and total. My mother's face went through several things in quick succession: surprise, then something guarded, then the beginning of performance. "Claire," she started. "I'm not angry," I said, which was mostly true. "I'm asking because I need to understand the full picture. You said that to me last week, actually, that you were looking at salary comparisons to understand the full picture. So, I'm doing the same thing." My father uncrossed his arms. "That money was for the house. We had some repairs." I turned the phone slightly so the satellite image was visible. "What repairs?" I asked. "I'm not seeing anything different. And the county improvement permits database doesn't show any permitted work at this address in the last 2 years. He stared at the phone. He said nothing. That was, itself, an answer. I looked at Carla. She was looking at the table. "The studio," I said gently. The wellness studio. That's where the 60,000 went. Carla's business that didn't open. Carla, my mother said sharply, and the single word contained a warning I wasn't supposed to have heard. I looked at my mother. You knew, I said. You've known all along that the money is gone, and that the mortgage is now higher than you can comfortably cover on retirement income. That's why you need me. Not for Carla's rent, for the payment. My father stood up. This is not your business, he said. You made it my business when you sat me at this table and asked me to start writing checks, I said. I stood up too. I'm 31 years old. I pay my own rent, my own insurance, my own medical bills. I built that from nothing, the same nothing Carla started with. The difference is that every time Carla ran into a wall, someone knocked it down for her. Every time I ran into one, I figured out how to climb it. You're being cruel, my mother said, her voice dropping into that particular register that had always made me apologize. It used to work immediately. That night it landed differently. I'm being accurate, I said. There's a difference. Carla looked up. Her eyes were wet, but there was something else in them too, something sharp. You've always acted like you were better than me, she said. Like because you have a good job, you're superior. Not all of us are built for spreadsheets, Claire. I know, I said, and I meant it without cruelty. I'm not asking you to be me. I'm asking your parents not to ask me to fund you. There's a difference. My father pointed at me. If you walk out of here without helping, you are walking out of this family. You understand that? We raised you. We put food on your table. We deserve better than this. You gave me the same things you gave Carla, I said. The same food, the same roof, the same starting point. I'm not holding that against you. What I am saying is that my financial resources are mine. I earned them. And I have made a decision with them that is not what you were hoping for. What decision? My mother asked. I took a breath. I have accepted a new position, I said. In Denver, I leave tomorrow morning. I have given notice on my apartment. My things are already in transit. The three of them stared at me. My father spoke first. Denver. Denver, I confirmed. You're leaving Austin, Carla said. Just like that. It wasn't just like that, I said. I've been planning it for 4 months. I didn't mention it earlier because I wanted to make the decision without anyone trying to redirect it, which, looking at the last 2 weeks, was clearly the right instinct. My mother stood up. She walked to the counter and put her hands on it and looked out the kitchen window, the way people do when they're trying not to fall apart in a way they'll be embarrassed by. After a moment, she said, So you're just leaving. You're abandoning us. I'm starting a new chapter, I said. I'm not abandoning you. I'm declining to be a financial instrument. We need you here, Carla said, and her voice cracked in a way that was either genuine or very good. You're the only one who has anything saved. You're the only one who could actually help. If you go, I don't know what I'm going to do. Get a job, I said, as gently as I could. A real one. One where you show up. The air changed. Carla's expression shifted. She had not expected me to know. I spoke to Priya, I said simply. I know it wasn't a downsizing. I know Diane let you go because of reliability issues. I'm not saying that to humiliate you. I'm saying it because your parents are telling a story to themselves and to me that doesn't match the facts, and you let them. You let them go to bat for a version of events that isn't true, and that's the part I can't get past. Carla said nothing. Her jaw was tight. My mother turned from the window. Claire, she said, her voice lower now, stripped of the performance. We didn't know what to do. She came to us and she was in trouble and we wanted to protect her. That's what parents do. They protect their children. I understand, I said, but I am also your child, and protecting Carla from consequences has never once involved protecting me from anything. It has always involved asking me to absorb the cost of her choices. And I am done absorbing it. Not because I don't love you, but because I have spent 10 years paying a debt I never incurred, and I am choosing, today, to stop. My father said, if you get in that car tomorrow, don't expect us to call. Okay, I said. That was all. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. I looked at the three of them one more time, my mother with her hand pressed to her mouth, my father rigid with a fury that I recognized now as the fury of a man who had been told no and didn't know what to do with the sound of it, Carla staring at the table like the wood grain might offer her something. I love you all, I said. I mean that. I hope things get easier. I walked out of the kitchen. I walked down the hallway past the photos on the wall, Carla's ballet recital, Carla's prom, a family beach trip where I was slightly out of frame. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The October air hit me, cold and clean. I walked to my car. I put my hands on the wheel and sat there for exactly 1 minute, not because I was wavering, but because I wanted to feel it fully. The enormity of it, the grief of it, the relief of it. Then I drove away. I did not sleep much that night. I lay in the empty apartment on an air mattress I was donating to a neighbor in the morning, and I stared at the ceiling and let the feelings move through me without trying to organize them into something manageable. I had done the right thing. I was also sad. Both things lived in me without canceling each other out. I was on the road by 6. The drive from Austin to Denver takes roughly 10 hours with stops. I had a playlist and a large coffee, and the kind of specific quiet that comes after a very loud thing. Somewhere in northern New Mexico, with the landscape stretching out wide and rust-colored around me, I started to cry. Not from regret, from release. The particular kind of crying that happens when you've been holding a breath for years and you finally just let it go. The Denver apartment was small and bright, with a window that looked out over a courtyard with a maple tree in it. I stood in the middle of the empty living room with my bags at my feet and looked at all that quiet space and thought, this is mine. All of it mine. No one can come and sit at a table in this room and slide an invoice across to me for someone else's choices. No one knows this address yet. I started work the following Monday. The new team was sharp and welcoming in the specific way that professional competence tends to be. My direct manager shook my hand and said, "We're really glad you're here." I realized I had not heard that sentence, or a version of it, from my family in a very long time. The calls came, of course. My mother the first week, 3 times. My father once, a voicemail that was mostly silence, and then him clearing his throat and hanging up. Carla sent 2 texts. The first said, "I hope you're happy with yourself." The second, 3 days later, said, "I got an interview at a dental office. I hope it goes okay." That second text I stared at for a long time. I wrote back, "That's great. I hope it goes well too. I meant it." I did not call my mother back. Not yet. I wrote her an email instead, 2 weeks after I arrived. I tried to say what I meant, without armor, which was harder than saying it with armor. I told her that I loved her, and that I understood that she was doing what felt like protecting her child. I told her that I was not disappearing from her life. I was restructuring my role in it. I was available to talk, but not to be a financial emergency contact. I was her daughter, not a line item. She did not respond for 9 days. Then she sent a short email back. It said, "I don't fully understand what happened, but I miss you. Maybe we can talk soon. Maybe I could come see Denver sometime." I read it twice. Then I wrote back, "I'd like that. Let me get settled first." That was 3 months ago. I am settled now. The maple tree outside my window has lost its leaves, and the courtyard has a thin coat of last week's snow on it. I have a couch I chose myself and a coffee maker I saved up for, and a bookshelf I assembled alone on a Saturday afternoon with the windows open and music playing. My savings account is intact. My 401k contribution went up, not down. My sister got the dental office job. I know this because she texted me on a Thursday morning, just those words, "I got it." I wrote back, "I knew you would." No one told her to apply. No one paid for her to interview. She did it because the option of someone else absorbing the cost was no longer available. I do not know what will happen with my parents and their mortgage. I know what the math looks like, and it is not gentle. My father has started doing some consulting work, which my cousin mentioned in passing. My mother has been quieter than usual on the family group chat, which she used to dominate. I hope they find their way through it. I hope they do not lose the house. I hope they look at what happened honestly and understand that the problem was not my departure. I cannot make any of those things happen. I can only keep my own accounts balanced and my own life moving forward. Last Sunday, I woke up early without an alarm. I made coffee in my own kitchen, in my own apartment in a city I chose for myself, and I carried the mug to the window and watched the snow on the courtyard slowly catch the morning light. My phone was face down on the table. No one called. No one needed anything from me. No one had calculated what I owed and arrived with the invoice. I stood there a long time, just drinking the coffee, just watching the light, hot and strong and exactly how I like it. That is what freedom tastes like. If you're wondering, it is warm, it is quiet, and it costs exactly nothing.